Dr. Elias Blackwood had performed over 3,000 surgeries in his 2-century existence, but he had never heard a heartbeat that made him question his sanity. Until tonight. The trauma bay at St. Mary's Hospital was a symphony of controlled chaos, monitors beeping, nurses calling out vitals, residents scrambling to keep up with the attending physicians. It was 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, and the emergency department was dealing with the aftermath of a multi-car collision on the interstate. Dr. Blackwood, Trauma Bay 3. The charge nurse's voice cut through the noise. 19-year-old female, massive internal bleeding, possible cardiac involvement. Elias moved with the fluid precision that had made him one of the most sought-after cardiothoracic surgeons on the East Coast. His colleagues attributed his supernatural skill to decades of experience, never suspecting that those decades numbered in the hundreds, or that his enhanced senses allowed him to hear things no human doctor could detect. "What do we have?" he asked as he approached the gurney. "Sophie Chen, 19 years old, driver in a head-on collision," the paramedic reported. "Massive trauma to the chest and abdomen, possible cardiac tamponade. She's been in and out of consciousness. Vitals are unstable." Elias looked down at the young woman on the gurney and felt something twist in his chest. She was small, delicate, with long black hair matted with blood, and a face that would have been beautiful if not for the pallor of impending death. But it wasn't her appearance that stopped him cold. It was the sound of her heartbeat. "Get her to OR 7, he said, his voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside his chest. "Prep for emergency thoracotomy and call Dr. Martinez. I want the best cardiac team we have." "Yes, sir." As they wheeled Sophie toward the operating room, Elias followed. His enhanced hearing focused entirely on the rhythm coming from her chest. It was impossible. It was insane. But there was no mistaking that particular pattern, the slight irregularity that occurred every 7th beat, the way the rhythm would skip and then compensate, the unique signature that he had listened to for 16 years. It was Elena's heartbeat, his daughter's heartbeat, the heartbeat that had stopped 5 years, 3 months, and 12 days ago. Dr. Blackwood, Dr. Sarah Martinez, his most trusted colleague, appeared at his elbow. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that," he murmured. "Sarah, I need you to take the lead on this one." "What? Elias, you never step back from a case like this." "I need you to take the lead," he repeated, his voice carrying an edge that made her look at him more closely. "Are you all right? You look—" "I'm fine, just trust me on this." Dr. Martinez nodded slowly. "Of course, but I want you assisting. Your hands are steadier than mine." "Agreed." The next 4 hours were the longest of Elias's extended life. He stood at the operating table, his hands working with mechanical precision while his mind reeled with the impossibility of what he was hearing. Every beat of Sophie Chen's heart was a reminder of his daughter, every skip in the rhythm an echo of the child he had lost. Elena had been born half vampire, the product of his relationship with a human woman who had died in childbirth. For 16 years, she had been the center of his world, brilliant, compassionate, determined to use her unique heritage to help others. She had wanted to be a doctor like him, to save lives and make a difference. Instead, she had died in a car accident, not unlike the one that had brought Sophie Chen to his table. But Elena had been an organ donor, against his wishes, against every instinct that told him vampire organs should never be transplanted into humans. She had insisted on donating her organs if anything ever happened to her. She had been young and idealistic, convinced that her half-vampire physiology might actually help the recipients. Elias had fought the decision, had tried to use his influence to prevent the donations from going through. But Eleanor had been legally an adult, and her wishes had been honored. He had never found out who received her organs. The transplant coordinators had maintained strict confidentiality, and he had been too consumed with grief to pursue it further, until now. "Heart rate is stabilizing," Dr. Martinez announced. "Bleeding is under control. I think we've got her." "Good," Elias said, though his voice sounded distant even to his own ears. "Very good." "Elias, are you sure you're all right? You've been unusually quiet." "I'm fine, just focused." But he wasn't fine. As they closed Sophie's chest, as they moved her to recovery, as they cleaned up and debriefed, Elias felt like he was moving through a dream or a nightmare. His daughter's heart was beating in another person's chest. Elena was alive in a way. Her heart was pumping blood through Sophie Chen's body, keeping her alive, giving her a future that Elena would never have. It should have been comforting. It should have felt like a gift, a way for Elena to live on and continue helping people even after death. Instead, it felt like torture. "The patient is stable," Dr. Martinez told him as they left the OR. "She'll need monitoring for the next 48 hours, but I think she's going to make it. You did good work in there." "We did good work," Elias corrected automatically. "Right, we—" Sarah studied his face. "Elias, when was the last time you took a vacation? You look exhausted." "I'm fine." "That's what you keep saying. But you don't look fine. You look like someone who's carrying the weight of the world." "Aren't we all?" "Not like this. This is different. This is personal." Elias looked at his colleague, this woman who had worked beside him for 8 years, without ever suspecting what he truly was. Sometimes the cases hit closer to home than others. "Did you know her? The patient?" "No, but—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "She reminds me of someone I lost. I'm sorry, that must be difficult." "It is." "Do you want to talk about it?" "No, but thank you." Dr. Martinez nodded and headed toward the locker room, leaving Elias alone in the corridor outside the recovery ward. He stood there for a long moment, listening to the sounds of the hospital around him, the beeping of monitors, the soft conversations of nurses, the distant hum of machinery, and underneath it all, barely audible even to his enhanced hearing, the steady rhythm of Sophie Chen's heartbeat, Elena's heartbeat. He found himself walking toward the recovery room, drawn by a compulsion he couldn't name. Sophie was unconscious, surrounded by machines and monitors, but she was alive. Her chest rose and fell with steady breaths, and her heart, Elena's heart, beat with the same irregular rhythm that had lulled him to sleep when his daughter was a baby. "She's lucky to be alive," a nurse said, appearing beside him. "Dr. Martinez said it was touch and go for a while." "Yes," Elias said, "very lucky." "Are you her doctor?" "I assisted with the surgery." "Well, you saved her life. Her family will be grateful." "Her family?" "Her parents are in the waiting room. They've been here all night." Elias nodded, though he made no move to leave. He stood there watching Sophie breathe, listening to the sound that had haunted his dreams for 5 years. "Doctor," the nurse said gently, "visiting hours don't start for another few hours. Maybe you should get some rest." "Yes," he said. "Yes, you're right." But instead of going home, Elias found himself in his office, staring at his computer screen. It took him less than an hour to hack into the transplant database, a skill he had acquired during his long existence but had never used for personal reasons. Until now. Sophie Chen had received her heart transplant 5 years ago, at the age of 14. The donor had been a 16-year-old female, blood type AB negative, who had died in a car accident. Elena's blood type, Elena's age at death, Elena's cause of death. There was no doubt. Sophie Chen was living with his daughter's heart. Elias leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of this knowledge settle over him like a shroud. What was he supposed to do with this information? How was he supposed to process the fact that part of his daughter was still alive, still beating, still functioning in another person's body? He thought about Elena's last words to him, spoken in the hospital room where she had died. "Promise me, Papa. Promise me that if something happens, you'll let them use my organs. Someone else should get to live." He had promised, even though it had broken his heart. Even though every instinct told him it was wrong, dangerous, potentially catastrophic. But Elena had been insistent. "I'm half vampire, Papa. My organs are stronger, healthier than normal human organs. I could save multiple lives. And what if the vampire physiology causes problems for the recipients? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But Papa, I can't bear the thought of dying for nothing. If I can't live, at least let me help others live." Now, 5 years later, Elias was faced with the consequences of that promise. Sophie Chen was alive because of Elena's heart, but what did that mean for Sophie? What did it mean for him? His phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Martinez. "Patient is awake and stable. Family wants to thank the surgical team. You should be here." Elias stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "On my way." When he arrived at Sophie's room, he found her sitting up in bed, looking pale but alert. Her parents were beside her, a middle-aged Asian couple who looked like they hadn't slept in days. "Sophie, this is Dr. Blackwood," Dr. Martinez said. "He was part of the team that saved your life." Sophie looked at him with dark eyes that seemed older than her 19 years. "Thank you," she said, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube. "Dr. Martinez said I almost didn't make it." "You're a fighter," Elias said, though his voice sounded strange to his own ears. "Your heart is strong." Something flickered across Sophie's face at his words. "My heart," she repeated softly. "Yes, it's been through a lot." Sophie had a heart transplant when she was 14, her mother explained. She was born with a congenital defect. The transplant saved her life. "I see," Elias said, though he already knew. "And how has the transplant been? Any complications?" "Some," Sophie said, her eyes never leaving his face. "Strange dreams, mostly. And sometimes I feel different, like there's something inside me that doesn't quite belong." "That's not uncommon with transplant patients," Dr. Martinez said quickly. "The psychological adjustment can be difficult." "Is it psychological?" Sophie asked, still looking at Elias. "Or is it something else?" "What do you mean?" Elias asked, though he was afraid he already knew. "I mean, sometimes I dream about things I've never experienced, places I've never been, people I've never met, and sometimes—" She paused as if deciding whether to continue. "Sometimes I feel like I'm not alone in my own body." Elias felt his blood run cold. "What kind of dreams?" "Sophie, honey, you don't need to bother the doctor with this," her father said gently. "It's all right," Elias said. "I'm interested in hearing about any unusual symptoms." Sophie looked at her parents, then back at Elias. "I dream about a man with dark hair and sad eyes. He's always in a white coat, and he's always looking at me like he's lost something precious. And sometimes in the dreams I call him Papa." The room went silent. Elias felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. That's very interesting," Dr. Martinez said carefully. "Transplant patients sometimes report dreams that seem to come from their donors, though the medical community doesn't fully understand the phenomenon." "Do you think," Sophie began, then stopped. "Do you think it's possible that I'm dreaming about my donor's memories?" "I think," Elias said slowly, "that the connection between donor and recipient is more complex than we understand." "Have you ever seen anything like this before?" Sophie's mother asked. "Not exactly like this," Elias said truthfully, "but every case is unique." "Dr. Blackwood," Sophie said suddenly, "have we met before? You seem familiar." "No," Elias said, though his voice cracked slightly. "We've never met." But even as he said it, he saw recognition flickering in her eyes. Not recognition of him exactly, but recognition of something, some connection that went deeper than memory, deeper than conscious thought. "I should let you rest," he said abruptly. "You've been through a lot." "Wait," Sophie said as he turned to leave. "Will I see you again for follow-up appointments?" "Dr. Martinez will be handling your care," Elias said. "She's an excellent physician. But you'll check on me sometimes." Elias looked at this young woman who carried his daughter's heart, who dreamed his daughter's dreams, who looked at him with eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul. "Yes," he said quietly. "I'll check on you." As he left the room, he heard Sophie say to her parents, "There's something about him, something important, I can feel it." Elias walked quickly down the corridor, his mind racing. This was impossible. Transplant recipients didn't dream their donors' memories. They didn't recognize people they had never met. They didn't carry traces of their donors' personalities and experiences, unless the donor was half vampire, unless the heart carried more than just muscle and blood vessels, unless it carried something of the soul. Eleanor had always been different from other half-vampires. Stronger, more intuitive, more connected to the supernatural world, despite her human heritage. If anyone's organs could carry traces of memory and personality, it would be hers. which meant that Sophie Chen wasn't just living with Eleanor's heart, she was living with part of Eleanor herself. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it was terrifying, because if Sophie was carrying part of Eleanor's essence, then she was also carrying part of Elena's supernatural nature, and that nature was slowly changing her, transforming her into something that was neither fully human nor fully vampire, something that might not survive the transformation. Elias spent the rest of the day researching everything he could find about organ transplants and supernatural physiology. The information was limited. Vampires rarely donated organs, and when they did, the recipients usually didn't survive long enough for detailed study. But what he found was troubling. Half-vampire organs, when transplanted into humans, created a slow transformation in the recipient. Not a full vampiric transformation, but something in between. The human body would gradually adapt to accommodate the supernatural organ, but the process was often fatal. Most recipients died within 10 years of transplantation. Sophie had already survived 5 years, but according to the research, the transformation would accelerate as she got older, as her body matured, and the supernatural influence grew stronger. She was living on borrowed time, and Elias was the only one who knew it. That evening, he found himself driving past Sophie's apartment building. He told himself he was just checking on a patient, making sure she had gotten home safely from the hospital. But the truth was more complicated. He needed to see her, needed to hear Elena's heartbeat, needed to feel connected to the daughter he had lost. It was unhealthy. It was obsessive. It was potentially dangerous for both of them. But he couldn't stop himself. Sophie lived in a modest apartment complex near the university where she was studying art therapy. Elias parked across the street and used his enhanced vision to look up at her third-floor window. She was there, sitting by the window with a sketchbook in her lap. Even from a distance, he could see that she was drawing, her hand moving with quick, confident strokes. He watched her for an hour, telling himself he would leave after just a few more minutes. But something about seeing her there, alive and healthy and pursuing her dreams, made it impossible to look away. This was what Elena would have been doing if she had lived, studying, creating, building a life for herself. Instead, Elena was gone, and Sophie was living the life his daughter would never have. It should have made him resentful. Instead, it made him protective. When Sophie finally closed her sketchbook and moved away from the window, Elias started his car and drove home. But he knew he would be back. He had found the last piece of his daughter, and he wasn't going to let her go, even if it destroyed them both. For the next 3 weeks, Elias found excuses to check on Sophie's progress. He reviewed her chart daily, consulted with Dr. Martinez about her recovery, and made sure he was present whenever she came in for follow-up appointments. "You're being unusually attentive to this patient," Dr. Martinez observed after Sophie's second post-operative visit. "Is there something I should know?" "She's an interesting case," Elias said carefully. "The combination of the transplant history and the recent trauma creates some unique challenges." "Interesting how?" "Her heart rhythm is unusual. I want to make sure we're monitoring it properly." "Unusual how?" "I haven't noticed anything abnormal." "It's subtle. You have to listen carefully." Dr. Martinez gave him a strange look. "Elias, are you sure you're all right? You've been acting differently since that night. More intense." "I'm fine." "That's what you keep saying, but I'm not convinced. Maybe you should talk to someone. The hospital has counseling services. I don't need counseling." "Everyone needs counseling sometimes, especially people in our profession. We see things, lose patience, carry burdens that civilians can't understand." "Sarah, I appreciate your concern, but I'm handling things fine." "Are you? Because watching you with Sophie Chen, it's like you're seeing a ghost." Elias went very still. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you look at her like she's someone you've lost, like she's connected to something painful in your past. You're imagining things." "Am I? Elias, in 8 years of working together, I've never seen you get emotionally involved with a patient. You're always professional, always detached. But with her... With her? What? With her, you're different. You care too much. Caring about patients is part of being a good doctor. There's caring and then there's whatever this is. This feels personal. Elias looked at his colleague, this woman who knew him better than almost anyone in his current life, and realized she was right. He was being too obvious, too invested, too emotional. You're right, he said finally. She does remind me of someone I lost, someone important. Who? My daughter. Dr. Martinez's expression softened immediately. Elias, I didn't know you had a daughter. Had. Past tense. She died 5 years ago. I'm so sorry, I had no idea. I don't talk about it, but Sophie, she's the same age Elena would have been. Same build, same coloring. Sometimes when I look at her, I see what my daughter might have become. It wasn't entirely a lie. Sophie did remind him of Elena, though not in the way he was implying. That must be incredibly difficult, Doctor, Martinez said gently. But Elias, you can't let personal feelings interfere with patient care. It's not fair to Sophie, and it's not healthy for you. I know. Maybe you should transfer her care to another physician. No. The word came out sharper than he intended. I mean, that's not necessary. I can maintain professional boundaries. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're already too involved. I'll be more careful. Elias, I said I'll be more careful. Dr. Martinez studied his face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. But I'm going to be watching. And if I think you're compromising patient care or your own well-being, I'm going to step in. Understood. But even as he agreed, Elias knew he couldn't step back. Not when Sophie was carrying Elena's heart. Not when she was dreaming Elena's dreams. Not when she was the closest thing to his daughter that he would ever have again. That evening, he found himself parked outside Sophie's apartment building again. It had become a routine, checking on her after work, making sure she was safe, listening to the sound of Elena's heartbeat from 3 stories up. He told himself it was medical monitoring. Sophie was his patient, and he was ensuring her recovery was progressing normally. But the truth was more complicated and more disturbing. He was becoming obsessed. As he sat in his car, watching Sophie's window, his phone rang. Dr. Blackwood, this is Sophie Chen. Elias nearly dropped the phone. Sophie, is everything all right? Are you experiencing any symptoms? I'm fine, physically anyway, but I was wondering, could we talk, in person? About what? About the dreams, about the things I've been feeling since the surgery, I think. I think there's something you're not telling me. Elias felt his blood run cold. What makes you think that? Because every time I mention the dreams, you get this look on your face, like you know exactly what I'm talking about, but you can't say anything. Sophie, I think you might be reading too much into... Dr. Blackwood, are you outside my building right now? Elias looked up at Sophie's window and saw her standing there, looking down at the street. Their eyes met across the distance, and he felt like he had been caught in a spotlight. Yes, he said quietly. I thought so. I've seen your car here before several times. I was just checking on me? That's what I thought at first. But doctors don't usually conduct house calls from the street. Elias closed his eyes. Sophie, I'm coming down, don't leave. Sophie, I don't think that's a good idea. Neither do I. But I need answers, and I think you have them. The line went dead. 5 minutes later, Sophie emerged from the building, wearing jeans and a sweater, her long black hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked young and vulnerable, but there was determination in her stride as she approached his car. Elias rolled down the window as she reached him. Get out, she said. What? Get out of the car. If we're going to have this conversation, we're going to have it face to face. Sophie, I really don't think... Dr. Blackwood, I've been having dreams about you for 5 years. Dreams where you're my father, where I love you more than anything in the world, where losing you would destroy me. And now you're sitting outside my apartment like some kind of stalker, looking at me like I'm a ghost. So either you explain what's going on, or I call the police and report you for harassment. Elias stared at her through the window, seeing Elena's determination in her eyes, hearing Elena's stubbornness in her voice. This was exactly the kind of thing his daughter would have done, confronted a problem head-on, demanded answers, refused to be dismissed or patronized. All right, he said, getting out of the car. But not here. Too public. Where then? There's a coffee shop 2 blocks away. It'll be quiet this time of evening. Fine. But Dr. Blackwood? Yes? If you try to run, I will find you. I don't know how, but I will. I can feel a connection between us, something that goes deeper than doctor and patient. I know, Elias said quietly. I feel it too. The coffee shop was nearly empty. Just a few students with laptops and an elderly man reading a newspaper. Elias and Sophie took a table in the back corner, away from the other customers. Start talking, Sophie said without preamble. It's complicated. I'm a smart girl. Try me. Elias looked at this young woman who carried his daughter's heart, who dreamed his daughter's dreams, who spoke with his daughter's voice. How could he explain the impossible truth without sounding insane? Tell me about the dream, he said instead. All of them, every detail you can remember. Why? Because I need to understand what you're experiencing before I can explain what's happening to you. Sophie studied his face for a moment, then nodded. They started about 6 months after the transplant. At first, they were just fragments, flashes of places I'd never been, faces I didn't recognize. But over time, they became more detailed, more coherent. What kind of places? A house with a big library, lots of medical books, journals, research papers. And there's always classical music playing, Chopin mostly. The person whose eyes I'm seeing through loves that music. Elias felt his chest tighten. Elena had spent countless hours in his study, reading his medical journals, listening to Chopin while she did her homework. What else? There's a man, the one I told you about. Dark hair, sad eyes, always in a white coat. In the dreams, I love him desperately. He's everything to me, father, teacher, protector. And he loves me back, but there's always this undercurrent of worry, like he's afraid of losing me. Does he have a name in the dreams? Papa. I always call him Papa, but sometimes when I'm older in the dreams, I call him by his first name. She paused, watching his face carefully. Elias. Elias felt like he had been punched in the chest. What else? There are other dreams too, darker ones, dreams about being in a car, about pain and fear and knowing I'm going to die. And in those dreams, my last thought is always about him, about Papa, and how much it's going to hurt him to lose me. Sophie. But here's the thing that really scares me, Dr. Blackwood. In the dreams, I'm not entirely human. I'm something else, something stronger and faster and more aware than normal people. And I can feel that same otherness in myself now, growing stronger every day. What do you mean? I mean, I can hear things I shouldn't be able to hear, see things in the dark that should be invisible. I'm stronger than I used to be, faster. And sometimes when I'm really focused, I can sense things about people, their emotions, their intentions, their health. Elias closed his eyes. The transformation was accelerating. Dr. Blackwood, whose heart do I have? Sophie, whose heart do I have? She repeated, her voice stronger. Because it's not just any heart, is it? It's special somehow, different. And you know whose it is, don't you? Elias opened his eyes and looked at this young woman, who was so much like his daughter, who carried his daughter's heart, who was slowly becoming something that was neither human nor vampire. Yes, he said quietly, I know whose heart you have. Tell me. It belonged to my daughter, Elena. She died 5 years ago in a car accident, and she was an organ donor. Sophie went very still. Your daughter. Yes. The man in my dreams. Papa. That's you. Yes. And the love I feel for him in the dreams, the connection, the bond, that's what she felt for you. Yes. Sophie was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. When she spoke again, her voice was soft. What was she like? She was. She was everything good in the world. Brilliant, compassionate, determined to help people. She wanted to be a doctor like me. She wanted to save lives. And she did save a life. Mine. Yes, she did. But there's more, isn't there? Something you're still not telling me. Elias hesitated. How could he explain that Elena had been half vampire, that Sophie was slowly transforming into something supernatural, that she might not survive the process? Elena was special, he said carefully. She had abilities that normal humans don't have. What kind of abilities? Enhanced senses, increased strength and speed, intuitive understanding of people and situations. The same abilities I'm developing. Yes. How is that possible? Because when you received her heart, you didn't just receive an organ. You received part of her essence, her nature, her supernatural heritage. Supernatural heritage? Elias took a deep breath. Eleanor was half vampire. Sophie stared at him for a long moment, then laughed. Vampire? You're telling me I have a vampire's heart? Half vampire. Her mother was human. And you? I'm a vampire, a full vampire. Sophie's laughter died away as she looked at his face and realized he was serious. You're not joking. I'm not joking. Vampires are real, yes, and I have a half-vampire's heart, yes. And that's why I'm changing, why I'm developing these abilities, yes. Sophie leaned back in her chair, her face pale. This is insane. I know how it sounds. Do you? Do you really? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're telling me that everything I thought I knew about the world is wrong. That vampires exist, that I'm turning into some kind of supernatural creature, and that the man who saved my life is actually the father of the girl whose heart is keeping me alive. That's an accurate summary, yes. And you've been watching me, following me, because you see your daughter in me, because I can hear her heartbeat in your chest, because when I look at you, I see the life she never got to live. That's not healthy. I know. And it's not fair to me. I know that too. But you can't stop yourself. No, I can't. Sophie was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee cup. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I'm dying, aren't I? She said quietly. What makes you think that? Because you look terrified. Because you're watching me like I'm going to disappear at any moment. Because the changes I'm experiencing, they're not sustainable, are they? A human body can't handle a vampire heart indefinitely. Elias felt his own eyes fill with tears. The research suggests that recipients of half-vampire organs rarely survive more than 10 years. And I've already survived 5. Yes. How long do I have? I don't know. The transformation seems to be accelerating. Your body is trying to adapt to accommodate Elena's heart, but the process is difficult. Difficult how? Your human physiology is fighting against the vampire nature of the heart. Eventually one will win. Either your body will successfully adapt and you'll become something like Elena was, or I'll die. Yes. And which outcome is more likely? Elias was quiet for a long moment. Based on the research, death is more likely. How much more likely? Significantly. Sophie nodded slowly, as if she had expected this answer. Is there anything that can be done? Any treatment? Any intervention? There is one option. What? I could transform you. Completely. Make you a full vampire. Would that save me? Probably. Your body would stop fighting against the vampire nature of the heart and would instead embrace it fully. But you would no longer be human. You would need blood to survive. You would be immortal, but you would also be a predator. And Elena? What would she have wanted? Elena never wanted anyone to be transformed against their will. She believed that becoming a vampire should always be a choice, never a necessity. So if I choose to remain human and die, I'm honoring her wishes. Yes, and if I choose to become a vampire and live, I'm going against everything she believed in. Not everything. She also believed in the value of life, in the importance of helping others, in using whatever gifts you have to make the world better. But she wouldn't want me to become a monster to save myself. You wouldn't be a monster. I'm not a monster. Aren't you? You've been stalking me for weeks. You've been obsessing over me because I remind you of your dead daughter. You've been lying to your colleagues and compromising your professional ethics. If that's not monstrous behavior, what is? Elias flinched as if she had slapped him. You're right, I have been behaving monstrously. Because you're a vampire? Because I'm a father who lost his child and found a piece of her in someone else. Because I'm selfish and desperate and I can't let go. And if I die, if I choose to remain human and let the transformation kill me, what will you do then? I don't know. Will you find another way to hold on to Elena? Will you become obsessed with someone else who reminds you of her? I don't know. Dr. Blackwood, Elias, you need help. Professional help. You're grieving, and that grief is making you do things that are harmful to both of us. I know. But knowing isn't enough, is it? You can't stop yourself. No, I can't. Sophie reached across the table and took his hand. The moment their skin touched, Elias felt a jolt of recognition, not his own recognition, but Eleanor's. For just an instant he could feel his daughter's love for him flowing through Sophie's touch. She loved you very much, Sophie said softly. I can feel it. The depth of her love, her gratitude for everything you gave her, her pride in being your daughter. Sophie, but she also worried about you. She was afraid that if something happened to her, you would lose yourself in grief. She was afraid you would stop living and start just existing. How do you know that? Because I can feel her memories sometimes, not just in dreams, but when I'm awake, when I touch you, when I'm in emotional situations, when I'm scared or sad or overwhelmed. It's like she's still here, still aware, still caring about the people she loved. Is she in pain, being trapped like that? No, she's not trapped. She's at peace. But she's worried about you. She wants you to be happy, to move on, to live your life instead of mourning hers. I don't know how to do that. Neither do I. But maybe we can figure it out together. What do you mean? I mean, maybe we can help each other. You can help me understand what's happening to me, what Elena was like, what it means to carry part of her inside me, and I can help you. I can help you say goodbye to her properly. Sophie, I can't ask you to... You're not asking, I'm offering. Because like it or not, we're connected now. Eleanor's heart beats in my chest, and Elena's father saved my life. We're part of each other's story now. And if you die, if the transformation kills you, then at least I'll die knowing the truth, and you'll know that you did everything you could to help me instead of just watching from the shadows. And if you choose to become a vampire, then I'll need someone to teach me how to be one. Someone who loved Elena enough to respect her wishes, even when it meant letting her go. Elias looked at this remarkable young woman who carried his daughter's heart, who spoke with his daughter's wisdom, who was offering him a chance at redemption he didn't deserve. What do you want to do? He asked. I want to learn about Elena. I want to understand who she was, what she believed in, what she dreamed about. I want to know the girl whose heart is keeping me alive. And then I'll decide whether to live as a vampire or die as a human. But either way, I'll make the choice with full knowledge of what it means. That could take time, weeks, maybe months. Do I have that long? I don't know. The transformation is unpredictable. Then we'd better get started. Elias nodded slowly. All right, but Sophie? Yes? If at any point you want me to leave you alone, if this becomes too much or too complicated, you just have to say the word. I'll step back and let Dr. Martinez handle your care. And you'll get the help you need, the counseling, the therapy, whatever it takes to deal with your grief in a healthy way. Yes? Promise me. I promise. Sophie smiled, and for a moment, Elias saw Elena in that smile, the same warmth, the same hope, the same determination to make the best of whatever life offered. Good, she said. Then let's go home. Home? Your home. I want to see Elena's room, her things, the life she lived. I want to understand the girl whose heart is teaching mine how to beat. Elias's house was exactly what Sophie had expected from the dreams. A large Victorian with a wraparound porch, surrounded by ancient oak trees and carefully tended gardens. But seeing it in person, walking up the front steps with Elena's father beside her, felt like coming home to a place she had never been. It's beautiful, she said as Elias unlocked the front door. Elena always said it looked like a house from a fairy tale, he replied. She loved the tower room on the 3rd floor, said it made her feel like a princess. The interior was warm and inviting, filled with antique furniture and thousands of books. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers, Chopin, just like in the dreams. Her room is upstairs, Elias said. I haven't changed anything since she died. Show me. They climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor, past family portraits and medical diplomas, past a lifetime of memories preserved in photographs and mementos. Elena's room was at the end of the hall, behind a door painted pale blue with silver stars. "She painted that when she was 12, Elias said she wanted to sleep under the stars every night." He opened the door and Sophie stepped into a room that felt like stepping into her own memories. Everything was exactly as she had seen it in the dreams. The four-poster bed with its white canopy, the desk by the window where Eleanor had done her homework, the bookshelves lined with medical texts and young adult novels. "She wanted to be a doctor," Sophie said, running her fingers along the spines of the medical books. "From the time she was 8 years old. She used to follow me around the hospital, asking questions about everything she saw. She was proud of you, proud to be your daughter." "How do you know that?" "Because I can feel it. When I'm in this room, when I touch her things, I can feel her emotions like they're my own." Sophie moved to the desk and picked up a framed photograph. Eleanor at her high school graduation, beaming with pride as she posed with her diploma. In the photo, she looked exactly like Sophie, but there was something in her eyes that was different. Older, wiser, more aware of the supernatural world around her. "We look alike," Sophie observed. "Yes. When I first saw you in the trauma bay for a moment, I thought somehow she had come back. Is that why you've been watching me? Because I look like her?" "Partly, but mostly because I can hear her heartbeat in your chest. Because when I listen to your heart, it's like she's still alive." Sophie set down the photograph and turned to face him. "Elias, I need you to understand something. I'm not Elena. I carry her heart, I dream her dreams, I feel echoes of her emotions, but I'm still Sophie Chen. I'm still my own person with my own thoughts and feelings and desires. I know that. Do you? Because sometimes when you look at me, I feel like you're seeing her instead of me." "You're right, I'm sorry. Don't apologize, just try to see me, the real me. Not the girl whose heart I carry, but the girl who's carrying it." "I'll try." Sophie nodded and continued exploring the room. In the closet, she found Elena's clothes, designer dresses mixed with jeans and t-shirts, everything in the same size that Sophie wore. On the nightstand, she found Elena's journal, filled with thoughts and dreams and plans for the future. "May I?" she asked, holding up the journal. "Of course, everything here is. Everything here belongs to her, and in a way, it belongs to you too now." Sophie opened the journal to a random page and began to read. "Papa is worried about me again. He thinks I don't notice, but I can see it in his eyes every time I mention wanting to help people, wanting to use my abilities for good. He's afraid that being half vampire makes me a target, that people will fear me or try to hurt me. But I can't live my life in hiding. I can't pretend to be something I'm not just to make him feel safer. I know he loves me. I know he's trying to protect me. But sometimes protection can become a prison, and I refuse to be imprisoned by fear." "She was frustrated with you," Sophie said, looking up from the journal. "Often, she thought I was overprotective." "You were overprotective. You were terrified of losing her." "Yes. And in trying to keep her safe, you sometimes made her feel trapped." "Yes. Is that what you're doing with me now?" Elias was quiet for a long moment. "Probably." "Elias, I appreciate that you want to protect me. I understand that you see Eleanor in me, and that makes you feel responsible for my safety. But I'm not your daughter, and I'm not your responsibility." "I know that, intellectually, but emotionally." "Emotionally, you're trying to save the daughter you couldn't save before." "Yes, but you can't save me by controlling me. You can't protect me by making my choices for me. Then how do I help you? How do I make sure you're safe? By giving me information, by being honest about the risks and the options, by supporting whatever decision I make, even if it's not the decision you would make. And if you choose to die, if you decide that becoming a vampire is worse than dying human, then you respect that choice, you hold my hand while I die, and you let me go with dignity. I don't know if I can do that. You have to. Because the alternative is becoming the kind of father Elena was afraid you would become, the kind who loves so much that it becomes suffocating." Elias sank into the chair by Elena's desk, looking older than his centuries. "She wrote about that, didn't she? About being afraid of my love." Not afraid of your love, afraid of your fear. She knew you loved her. She just wished you could trust her to take care of herself. But she couldn't take care of herself. She died. She died in an accident, a random, tragic accident that no amount of protection could have prevented. If I had been more careful, if I had insisted she not drive that night, then she would have died some other way, some other time, or she would have lived, but she would have resented you for treating her like a child. How do you know that? Because I can feel her frustration. When I touch her things, when I read her words, I can feel how much she loved you and how much she wished you could see her as an adult capable of making her own decisions. She was 16. She was 16 and half vampire. She was stronger and smarter and more capable than most adults, but you still treated her like a fragile human child. Because I was terrified of losing her, and now you're terrified of losing me. Yes, but Elias, you never really had me to lose. I'm not your daughter, I'm not your responsibility. I'm just a young woman who happened to receive your daughter's heart. You're more than that. Am I? Or do you just want me to be more than that, because it makes your grief easier to bear? Elias looked at her with eyes full of pain and recognition. Both. You're more than just a transplant recipient because you carry part of Elena's essence. But you're right, I also want you to be more because it gives me a way to hold on to her. And that's not fair to either of us. No, it's not. Sophie closed Elena's journal and sat on the edge of the bed. Tell me about the transformation. What exactly is happening to me? Your human physiology is trying to adapt to accommodate a half-vampire heart. The heart carries supernatural properties, enhanced healing, increased strength, heightened senses. But your body wasn't designed to handle those properties. So it's fighting against them. Yes, and the fight is getting more intense as the supernatural influence grows stronger. What are the symptoms going to be? Fatigue as your body struggles to maintain the balance, increased appetite, especially for protein, sensitivity to light and sound, mood swings as your brain chemistry adjusts, and eventually your body will either successfully adapt or it will shut down from the strain. How will I know which is happening? If the adaptation is successful, the symptoms will gradually decrease and you'll stabilize as something between human and vampire. If it's failing, I'll die. Yes. And if you transform me into a full vampire, the transformation would override your body's resistance. Instead of fighting against the supernatural influence, your physiology would embrace it completely. But I would need blood to survive. Yes. Human blood? Not necessarily. Animal blood can sustain vampires, though it's less satisfying. And I would be immortal. Yes. Would I still be me? Would I still have my memories, my personality, my feelings? Yes. Vampiric transformation doesn't change who you are fundamentally. It just changes what you are. And Elena, would I still be able to feel her presence, her memories? I don't know. The transformation might strengthen that connection, or it might sever it entirely. Sophie was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. How long do I have to decide? Based on your current symptoms, I would estimate weeks rather than months. And if I wait too long, the transformation might become impossible. If your body is too damaged by the fighting, vampiric transformation might not be able to save you. So I need to decide soon. Yes. Sophie stood up and walked to Elena's window, looking out at the garden below. What would Elena want me to do? I can't answer that. Yes, you can. You knew her better than anyone. You understand her values, her beliefs, her priorities. What would she want me to do? Elias was quiet for a long moment. She would want you to choose for yourself. She would want you to make the decision based on what you want, not on what anyone else wants for you. Even if what I want is to die human rather than live as a vampire. Even then. And you? What do you want me to do? I want you to live. I want you to choose transformation, to become a vampire, to survive this process and have centuries ahead of you. Because you love me? Because I love the part of Elena that lives in you. Because losing you would feel like losing her all over again. That's not a good reason for me to make a life-altering decision. No, it's not. So what would be a good reason? If you want to live. If you have things you want to accomplish, experiences you want to have, people you want to help. If the idea of immortality appeals to you more than the idea of a natural death. And if it doesn't. If I would rather live a short, fully human life than a long, supernatural one, then that's your choice to make, and you'll respect it? I'll try to respect it. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. But it's the most honest answer I can give you. Sophie turned back to face him. I want to meet other vampires. I want to understand what that life would really be like before I make my decision. That's a good idea. But it's also dangerous. Most vampires don't react well to humans who know about their existence. But you know vampires who would be willing to talk to me. A few old friends who trust my judgment. Then arrange it. I want to see what I would be choosing if I decide to transform. All right? But Sophie? Yes? Some of them are going to try to influence your decision. They're going to tell you that vampiric existence is superior to human life, that immortality is a gift that shouldn't be refused. And others are going to tell me the opposite? Probably not. Most vampires believe that vampirism is preferable to humanity. But you don't? I think both have their merits. Vampirism offers power, longevity, enhanced capabilities, but humanity offers something vampires can never have again, which is the preciousness that comes from mortality, the intensity that comes from knowing your time is limited, the ability to change and grow in ways that immortals often can't. Elena was mortal, even though she was half vampire. Yes, and that mortality made every moment with her more precious. Do you think she would have chosen to become a full vampire if she had lived long enough to make that choice? I don't know. She never talked about it directly, but she valued her humanity, her ability to connect with both worlds. I want to read more of her journal. I want to understand her thoughts about vampirism, about mortality, about what it means to be caught between two worlds. Of course, take your time. Sophie spent the next several hours reading Elena's journal, while Elias made phone calls, arranging meetings with vampires who might be willing to speak with her. The journal painted a picture of a young woman struggling with questions of identity and belonging, torn between her human heritage and her vampire nature. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to be fully one thing or the other, Elena had written. To be completely human, with all the limitations and vulnerabilities that entails, or to be completely vampire, with all the power and isolation that brings. Being half of each means I'm never fully either. I'm strong enough to protect myself, but not strong enough to protect others. I'm mortal enough to age and die, but immortal enough to outlive most of my human friends. Papa thinks being half vampire makes me special, gives me the best of both worlds, but sometimes it feels like it gives me the worst of both worlds instead. She was lonely, Sophie said when Elias returned. Yes, it was hard for her to form close relationships with humans because she had to hide so much of herself. And it was hard for her to connect with vampires because they saw her as weak, as lesser. Did she have friends? A few, mostly other supernatural beings who understood what it was like to live between worlds. What about romantic relationships? She was interested in someone when she died, a young man from her school, but she had never told him what she was. She was planning to tell him. She was thinking about it. She wrote about it in her journal. The fear of rejection, the hope for acceptance, the difficulty of loving someone while keeping such a fundamental part of yourself secret. Sophie flipped through the journal until she found the entries about the boy Elena had liked. His name was Michael, and Elena had been deeply conflicted about whether to reveal her nature to him. I love him, Elena had written, or I think I do. But how can I really love someone who doesn't know who I really am, and how can I tell him the truth when it might destroy everything between us? Papa says that love requires honesty, but he also says that honesty can be dangerous. He spent his whole life hiding what he is from the people he works with, the people he cares about. How can he tell me to be honest when he's built his entire existence on secrecy? She was right, Sophie said. You were asking her to do something you've never been able to do yourself. Yes, and I regret that. I regret that she died before she could experience real love, real intimacy, real connection with another person. Is that what you want for me? The chance to experience those things? I want you to have every opportunity that Elena never had. Even if pursuing those opportunities means choosing mortality over immortality. Even then, you're learning. Eleanor was a good teacher. Even in death, she's still teaching me how to love without controlling. Over the next week, Sophie met with 3 vampires that Elias had contacted. Each conversation gave her a different perspective on vampiric existence. The first vampire, a woman named Catherine who had been transformed in the 1800s, spoke eloquently about the joys of immortality, the ability to witness history unfold, to accumulate knowledge and experience over centuries, to develop abilities and talents that mortals could never achieve. You would have eternity to become whatever you want to be, Catherine told her. Artist, scholar, healer, leader, there would be no limit to what you could accomplish. The second vampire, a man named Marcus who had been transformed against his will during World War II, offered a darker perspective. Immortality sounds romantic until you've lived it, he said. Until you've watched everyone you love age and die while you remain unchanged. Until you've seen the same patterns of human behavior repeat themselves century after century. Until you realize that eternity is a very long time to carry the weight of your mistakes. The third vampire, an ancient being named Lydia, who claimed to have been alive for over 1,000 years, spoke about the isolation that came with extreme longevity. The older you get, the harder it becomes to form meaningful connections, she explained. You've seen it all, experienced it all, lost it all so many times that it becomes difficult to invest emotionally in anything or anyone. Immortality can be a blessing, but it can also be a curse. After each conversation, Sophie returned to Elias's house to process what she had learned. She continued reading Elena's journal, looking for clues about what the girl might have chosen if faced with the same decision. I think she would have chosen mortality, Sophie said one evening as she and Elias sat in his study. What makes you think that? The way she writes about her human friends, her human experiences. She valued the intensity that came from knowing her time was limited. She appreciated the way mortality made every moment precious. But she also wrote about wanting to help people, to make a difference in the world. Immortality would have given her centuries to do that. Or it might have made her lose touch with the humanity she was trying to help. The vampires I met, they're all somewhat disconnected from human concerns. Even the ones who try to help humans seem to view them as projects rather than equals. That's not entirely unfair. When you've lived for centuries, it's hard to relate to beings whose entire existence spans less than 100 years. But Elena didn't want to lose that connection. She wanted to bridge the gap between human and vampire, not transcend it. So you think she would have chosen to remain half vampire rather than transform fully? I think she would have chosen to live as fully as possible, for as long as possible, without trying to extend that time artificially. And you? What are you choosing? Sophie was quiet for a long moment. I'm choosing mortality. Sophie? I'm choosing to live as a human for whatever time I have left, and to die as a human when that time is up. Are you sure? I'm sure. I've thought about it carefully, weighed all the options, considered all the perspectives, and I've realized that what I want most is to live authentically, as myself, for whatever time I have. Even if that time is very short. Even if that time is very short. Why? Because I've spent 5 years living with Elena's heart, feeling her emotions, dreaming her dreams. And what I've learned from her is that life isn't about how long you live, it's about how fully you live. And you can't live fully as a vampire? I can't live fully as someone I'm not. And I'm not a vampire, Elias. I'm a human who happens to carry a vampire's heart. Transforming me wouldn't make me more myself, it would make me less myself. But you'll die. Yes, I'll die. And that's sad, and it's scary, and it's going to hurt the people who care about me. But it's also natural and right and honest. How long do you think you have? Based on my symptoms, maybe a few weeks, maybe less. And how do you want to spend that time? I want to finish reading Elena's journal. I want to learn more about her, about the life she lived, about the dreams she had. I want to understand the girl whose heart is keeping me alive. And then? And then I want to help you say goodbye to her properly. I want to help you let her go so you can move forward with your own life. Sophie, I don't think I can... Yes, you can, because Elena wouldn't want you to spend eternity mourning her. She would want you to honor her memory by living fully, by helping others, by being the father she was proud to have. How do you know that? Because I can feel it. When I touch her things, when I read her words, when I listen to her heart beating in my chest, I can feel her love for you and her hope that you'll find peace. And if I can't, if losing you feels like losing her all over again, then you'll grieve and you'll heal and you'll learn to carry that love in a way that doesn't consume you. With help, professional help, from people who understand grief and loss and the complicated ways that love can become destructive. You're very wise for someone so young. I'm wise because I carry the heart of someone who loved you enough to want you to be happy, even after she was gone. Epilogue. 6 months later. Dr. Elias Blackwood stood in the cemetery on a crisp autumn morning, holding 2 bouquets of white roses. The first he placed on Elena's grave, as he had done every month for 5 years. The second he placed on the newer grave beside it, where Sophie Chen had been laid to rest 3 months earlier. Sophie had lived for 6 weeks after making her decision, and she had spent that time exactly as she had planned, learning about Elena, reading her journal, helping Elias process his grief and begin to heal. She had died peacefully, in her sleep, with Elias holding her hand, and Elena's heart finally coming to rest. "Hello, my girls," he said softly. "I brought you flowers." The grief was still there, still sharp and painful, but it was different now, cleaner somehow, less desperate. Sophie had helped him understand that loving someone didn't mean holding on to them forever. It meant honoring their memory by living the kind of life they would have wanted for you. "I started seeing Dr. Martinez's therapist," he told the graves. "Dr. Sarah Chen, Sophie's cousin, actually. She specializes in grief counseling, and she's helping me work through some of the unhealthy patterns I developed after Elena died. And I've been thinking about what you both would want for me. Elena, you always said I should use my abilities to help people. Sophie, you said I should honor Elena's memory by being the father she was proud to have. So I've made a decision. I'm going to start a foundation, the Elena Sophie Foundation for Organ Donation Research. We're going to study the long-term effects of supernatural organ transplants, develop better protocols for monitoring recipients, maybe even find ways to make the process safer. It won't bring either of you back, but it might help other people in similar situations. It might save lives. The way Elena wanted to save lives. A gentle breeze stirred the roses on both graves, and for a moment Elias could have sworn he heard something that sounded like approval carried on the wind. "I miss you both," he said. "I'll always miss you. But I'm learning to carry that love in a way that helps me live instead of just survive. Thank you, Sophie, for teaching me how to let go. And thank you, Elena, for giving your heart to someone who could teach me that lesson. I love you both, always." As he walked away from the cemetery, Elias felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 years. Hope for the future. Not because the pain was gone, it would never be completely gone, but because he had learned that love could transcend death without becoming obsession. That grief could coexist with joy, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to choose their own path. Eleanor's heart had saved Sophie's life, and Sophie's wisdom had saved his soul. It was, he thought, exactly the kind of legacy both of them would have wanted. What an emotionally devastating and beautiful journey of love, loss, and the courage to let go. Doctor. Elias's discovery that his patient carried his dead daughter's heart creates one of the most complex explorations of grief and obsession in supernatural fiction. Which moment broke your heart the most? When Elias first heard Elena's heartbeat in Sophie's chest, when Sophie chose mortality over immortality, or when he finally learned to honor both their memories by living fully. If you enjoyed this powerful tale of a father's love transcending death and a young woman's wisdom teaching him how to heal, Make sure to subscribe for more stories that explore the deepest mysteries of the human heart. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think Sophie made the right choice in refusing vampiric transformation, or should she have chosen immortality to honor Eleanor's sacrifice? And get ready for our next story about a demon lord who's been cursed to work as a kindergarten teacher, until he meets the single mom who might just break his curse and steal his immortal heart.